X-Men. Get it!
Hey everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Battle of the Atom. This is your weekly X-Men podcast where we rank every story from A to Z.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Zach. And Adam...
Hey, how we doing, Zach?
I mean, I'm doing pretty good. I'm in the midst of another...
Oh no! X-Men update! X-Men update!
It's an X-Men update. Actually, I don't have anything fancy to say. I should have thought about this lead-in a lot sooner, but we're essentially just going to continue our trend of talking about all things Age of X-Man with our special guest today.
Woohoo!
Hi!
Guys, I'm sorry, Vita. We got Vita Ayala.
Hello. I'm doing great. I'm very bad at
this. I think
yeah.
3 out of 3 Age of X-Men creators have just kind of jumped in because we didn't tell them not to.
I'm sorry.
You're fine. You're fine.
I will
Vita's
say
here.
I did it on purpose a little bit because I do remember that from the past two.
I don't like how the entirety of the Age of X-Men creative teams are conspiring against us, Adam. I think that's rough. But that's good. No, Vita, you are, well, 1, welcome to the show. 2,
Thank you.
You're writing Prisoner X with art by Herman Peralta, and issue 1 has come out. It's real good, guys.
Thank you. Yeah, I am blessed to be on this book with both Herman and Mike Spicer, who is incredible on colors.
I'll tell you, I really liked Peralta's art when he was on the Cable run with Zach and Lonnie. But Spicer's colors on this really took him up to another level in this book. He's becoming someone that's turning into like a must buy, and I think he's got this like kind of low key, this like Gabriel Hernandez Walta kind of vibe, but a little bit more realistic. And I think it super works for this book.
I agree. He's able to hit the like grittiness when it needs to be hit, but then do some really nice softer stuff. And then his expressions like are unbelievable. The way that he portrays emotion just through like face and acting is next level.
He is great, but he's not here, which is his loss. Our loss too. We did not ask him. But Vita, can you introduce yourself to X-Men fans, since this is the first real X-Men book you've done?
Yeah. Hi. My name is Vita Ayala. As said before, I am a comic book writer. I am full-time freelance now, which is super cool. And I've written a lot of work for hire stuff, kind of peppered throughout. So I've done some stuff for DC. I co-wrote an issue of Supergirl with Sue Orlando. I wrote some Wonder Woman stories and a Batgirl issue and a Batman Beyond issue. I am doing Livewire for Valiant, which is Livewire's first solo title, which is super cool. And I'm doing Prisoner X for Marvel, as well as a couple of issues of Shuri. So.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
Yeah.
Now, have you always been a fan of X-Men, or is this something that you've had to just kind of lean into as the jobs have presented themselves?
That's actually a really funny question. I have always been generally a fan of just superhero stuff, but actually
Sure.
X-Men and Bishop specifically, they're the first 2 comics that I bought were, one was an X-Men comic with Bishop on the cover, and I was like, I don't know, 6 or 7. And it was however old I was when his first appearance was.
Mm-hmm.
I walked over to this like spinner rack at a bodega, and I was like, there's a black guy. I'm going to buy that. And then there was like a Wonder Woman comic next to it. And as everyone who has heard me talk before, I used to think Wonder Woman was Puerto Rican because she looked like one of my cousins. And so I was like, oh, a Puerto Rican lady and a black guy. I think I'll like comics. And I brought them over to my mom, and she paid for them. So Bishop was like one of my introductions to comics in general. So I've been a big fan for a long time.
See, ladies and gentlemen, representation matters.
It
And
sure does. Even mistaken representation.
I also love the idea of, my daughter is 9, and I'm just loving the idea that like your introduction to comics was this ultra violent, like shotgun wielding future Terminator guy.
Oh man. My mom was like she's a big nerd. And so like I'd already by that age, the first movie that I saw in theaters that wasn't a Disney movie was Batman in 1989 when I was 4.
Nice.
Like she was like, we're gonna do this. And I was like, oh, this is gonna scar me for life. And so she just saw it and she was like, yep, sure, buy this book. That seems good. That seems like a good idea.
It seems like it's worked out for you pretty well so far, though.
She seems to dig it. She gets a free copy of all my books, and that makes her happy. So, but she was super pumped about the X-Men book because, as I said, I've been a fan since then, and I haven't always read every single title that's coming out, but
Sure.
I watched all of the movies and I watched the TV show, like the cartoons. And if Bishop's on it, I'll probably buy it. So, like, she knows this is a big deal for me.
That's awesome. Now, for our fans, not our fans, excuse me, no one's really a fan of us.
Hey, there's a guy.
There is. Okay. For X-Men fans who may not be familiar, you came up through a DC talent development program, right, Vita? Is that correct?
I did. At the same time that I was pitching some creator-owned work with Black Mask, which I do have a creator-owned book through, I was doing the DC Writers Workshop, which was kind of like half crash course in superhero comics, and then half just like almost like just a writing group where you go and critique each other's work and get better in general. But that was an incredible program. And through that, I had my first published work, which was a Wonder Woman short. And then soon after, a 2-issue Amanda Waller story. So
that's so cool.
I gotta wonder if the people at Black Mask ever get just a little bit mad that they essentially turned into a feeder program for this generation of X-Men writers between you and Rosenberg and Zach and Lonnie.
I don't think so, because it's really nice. I love doing creator-owned books too, and I didn't mention them before, but I do have 2 and working on a few more. But I go and I do creator-owned work with like Black Mask and Vault, and then the books that they would never do, like a superhero book, I get to do with Marvel, which is really cool.
No, that's awesome. That said, though, Marvel and specifically the Age of X-Men are doing some interesting things that they would not have done in the past. Including your story, which is a prison drama, at least in the first issue. That's a pretty tried and true staple of movies and TV, especially with big stuff like Oz and Orange is the New Black kind of being cultural phenomenons when they came out. So looking at that, what are some of your favorite prison stories, and which ones had a big impact on the story you're trying to tell with Prisoner X?
I love prison dramas, which is a problem because I shouldn't. So like, I love Oz. The first 2 seasons of Orange is the New Black was my jam. I also really like reading about true crime stuff and also just kind of memoirs and that kind of stuff from people that have been in the system. I find that much more informative, I think. So like when going into this, I actually kind of wanted to pull a bait and switch, which is you come for like the I don't know if you used to watch exploitation stuff like from the 70s, but the like women in cages and like heat and like all that kind of stuff. And then you go, oh wait, it's not that, but it's still cool. Because I mean, people expect it to be, kind of that like, oh, they're going to be gangs and it's going to be this and that.
Right.
But there was a different story that we wanted to tell. And so I thought, well, I'll give them a little of the first thing, but then what I really want to do is kind of layer in a little bit of a mystery and also talk about some issues that people face behind bars.
Now, that kind of leads into another question I had, because in a previous interview, I believe with Marvel.com, you discussed wanting to explore how the oppression of the physical space of prison interacts with the prisoners. And in this story, it's probably no coincidence that your prison is called the Danger Room. So how have you gone about exploring those kind of themes in Prisoner X?
We we start off kind of slow, right? So it's the first issue, especially, although we hint at something in the first issue, but I won't spoil it. But we start off with like, this is what you've come to expect, and it's already bad, right? Like, prison is bad no matter how you slice it. But as we go along in the series, what we kind of show is that each person is struggling with the prison in their own way. And I can't really, like, I will spoil things if I get too much into detail, but it was really important that we kind of show the prison from other people's perspective and how they're kind of like dealing with being in this space. I think it's pretty cool. Issue 3 is absolutely like off the walls, bonkers in terms of that. So I'm really excited for things to get there. But yeah, I think that's all I can say without spoiling it.
Well, I think that's fair. I really love the cast that you have here, and we may get into a little bit about how you develop that. But I think what I'm more interested in at this point is that, you know, we talked about some of the prison tropes that have been in this genre before. They often have these character types. I think it's really interesting that you've filled the quote unquote big guy you don't mess with character as a really uncharacteristic beast. You know, it's an inspired choice. He's normally much more mild mannered, and here he is this like intense, huge, scraggly guy. And I'm just curious how you made that decision for Beast to be that guy as part of the story.
I went back and forth about it, and I honestly, if you heard a thump, it was my cat. I honestly, I wanted it to be Gabby at first.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't have been upset about that.
And it made me laugh really hard. But ultimately, like, I'm a really big Beast fan as well. I love Beast. When I was a kid, he was my favorite part of the show besides Storm, just Beast all day. And I wanted to do something where physically that is what you would expect from a character like Beast, but knowing him, it's really jarring. And so I wanted to play with that in the first issue. And then going forward, you get to kind of see that, like, they're all playing these roles, right?
Right.
You know, tropes are these kind of cookie cutter things, and then the characters go there, and then what you're supposed to do is play with them. So what happens when there's a character that's intelligent enough to be aware of that? Like, I'm not saying that he knows what's going on, because the whole point is that it's a mystery, but like,
right.
He's, no matter what you do to Beast, he's always going to be a very intelligent person. So what happens when you're put in a situation where the only way to survive is maybe to give them what they expect? And that's kind of what I wanted to do and play with him there. Because all of them are very powerful, and all of them are dangerous in their own right. So that role could have been filled by Gabby, filled by, you know, Polaris. It could have been filled by even Danny. Like, but I really wanted to do that thing with Beast, because to me, he's the ultra smart guy.
Now that brings up a pretty interesting topic in the cast that you have for this book, because you have Polaris, you have Danny, Moonstar, you've got Beast, Bishop, and Gabby, Honey Badger.
I love her so much.
We do too. She's great.
A delight, and we need to protect her at all costs.
Absolutely.
Her being in prison scares me a lot, but I keep telling myself it's fine. No one's going to hurt Gabby. They had a scene in an X book this last year that said, I'm not going to be the one to kill Honey Badger, and I've got to assume that was a little bit of the authors coming through onto the script.
I'm going to tell you right now, I don't know if I could ever do anything to permanently damage Gabby, because I love her so much. I mean, maybe emotionally, but
oh, well, that's different. That's different. Everyone's got those.
Yeah, the cast is a lot of fun. It's a lot of characters that I find really interesting, or that I've connected with, kind of just in my time being a fan of X-Men and just that X universe.
Now, were these characters that you were kind of assigned, or were some of these your selections for the book?
Honestly, I was assigned most of them, and there was a little bit of leeway. You see in the first issue, I can talk about the first issue, right?
Yeah, you talk about spoilers for the first issue, guys. It's good. Sorry. Go read it. Pause the podcast. Go to Comixology. Hit that buy button. Flip through the pages. Come back. We're here.
So Shard's in there, and like,
Oh yeah, we're gonna talk about that.
that was definitely a me thing. And Danny was at first a yes, then a no, and then they were like, well, put her in there if you want her. I was like, I do.
Yeah,
How
we
do you
want
say
to
no
we
to
want to
Danny
talk
Phantom?
about that too. But
Are you tired of people just like assuming that everyone doesn't know that Danny's in 2 books?
I like when people tell me what I'm doing. Like, are you aware? And I'm like, oh, really?
I had no idea.
I don't know. I wasn't sure that I would be allowed to. And then we worked it out internally, and that was really nice because I think for me, Danny was me when I was like a teenager, just real angry and just going through some stuff. But like, she's come to a place where she knows who she is, and I really like that. And so to bring her back to kind of this state of not quite having a center was really interesting for me, and I wanted to explore that.
Awesome.
And for her and for Lorna actually too, I kind of wanted to show like the way that women are treated just in general, but also kind of when people have decided that they are unstable or, you know, they don't know what's best for themselves. And so that's kind of what both of them are kind of doing in this book in different ways.
Well, Zach and Lonnie kind of described to us that there was this master spreadsheet of sorts, you know, where they had 60 odd X characters and they're kind of talking about what could be an offshoot, you know, like this could be a separate book. This could be a separate book. So in being handed this, you know, are you being handed both the cast and the pitch? Or is this something that, you know, you were allowed a little bit more freedom in terms of, you know, where it was going to go?
The pitch for this was maybe a paragraph.
Okay.
So the basic scenario was given to me, but they were like, you can make it whatever you want. So it really was like, here's a cast of characters, and some of them have kind of shifted and changed since the initial thing. Bishop's in prison because this happens in Alpha. Go. I was like, awesome. And then there were some aesthetic things that like, they were like, you know, these things have to kind of be hit. And it wasn't the gritty darkness aspect at all.
Yeah.
It was just like in keeping with the aesthetic of the outside utopia. What would a prison look like if it was part of that place, basically, even a hidden prison?
I think, yeah, one of the interesting parts of the pitch here, to me at least, is that a lot of the different Age of X-Men books are playing around with different things that, you know, are the rules of this universe, but that are also reflecting real world, you know, societal issues. Given that Bishop is basically in prison because he's in an interracial well, all right, let me back up. He's in a sexual relationship with Jean Grey that happens to be interracial. And our POV character here is an African-American going into prison. Is it part of the pitch, you know, to at least, you know, hold a mirror up to this idea of mass incarceration, you know, and what's going on with the prison system in the United States?
It didn't like the way that it shook down, I think, with it being a black man and a white woman was incidental at the time. But I really was like, I'm just going to take that and run with it. Thank you. I was like, man, you just lobbed it real soft at me. I'm just gonna do it. And I talked to them about that. I was like, hey, like this is a thing. And they were like, yeah, use it. Go for it. You know, like push it as far as you can. And I was like, okay. Cool. So I'm going to do that. That is a major issue that we have in this country. Immediately brings to mind 5 or 6 different, very high profile kind of things that have happened, you know, in our country. Well, more than that, but like names spring to mind immediately. And I was like, this is something that like people are going to notice. And it is not something that we are trying to ignore. Right. Because we are given the chance to be like, do you think this is right? And the answer should be no. Like, if you hear that premise and you're immediately like, oh, sure, that's not the reaction. The reaction we want is, now, hold on a second. And that's not a shock value thing. I'm personally, and this is just me, I'm not into that. Like, oh my God, like click here to find out. And then it's like, oh, like more reasonable. I'm like, no, that is the feeling that we get when it happens in real life, and we want to make sure that you are empathetic towards that. We are with you in this feeling, right? And sometimes it takes having a character like Bishop, who is kind of in general, I would say, I guess people can find me on the internet, but pretty beloved. You know what I mean? Like, he's an X-Man, and that means something globally that, you know, it gets attention. And so I wanted to be like, hey, you care about Bishop? Let's widen that. Let's care about everybody.
Well, it is interesting because there is a subset of X fans that like cannot forgive Bishop because of what happened with Hope, and the whole Messiah.
He did murder a planet.
Yeah,
right. To kill a child. Yeah. Like, look, I like Bish. Cards on the table. Bad move on his part.
That being said, though, I do think that there is, you know, you were talking about shock factor. We don't really ever get to see our heroes in this kind of setting. And I think that one splash page that you and Herman have of Bishop just being in the cell for the first time, there's a shock factor to that, you know, to seeing this character who we are not used to being in that context suddenly.
It's really, for me too, something that was really like affecting, right? The last thing I want to do is put a black man behind bars, especially one that important to me, right? But I want people reading it to be with him. And it was really important, and Herman knocked this out of the park. He's truly like inspired, like this guy. I was like, I want you to show me a man who doesn't deserve to be here and who is scared, but is also trying to figure out his next move. Like, that's what I wanted for that page, right? And I think you look at that page and you go, this man is in here because he loved somebody? You put him behind bars literally because he loved somebody? That's unjust. And so, like, we want that feeling, not the anger necessarily, but the feeling of empathy and being like, no, this is not right.
It's the feeling that I have really been in. It's the reason why I've been enjoying Age of X-Man as much as I have, because it feels like the teams doing this are looking at what the X-Men can be as a reflection of modern society and updating that, saying, hey, these are real issues that real people are dealing with, and these are real ways people are being oppressed today. How can we have, our team of, hated and feared characters reflect how people are hated and feared in today's society? And I think that it's a very refreshing change of that, and allows people to tell stories that otherwise we wouldn't have gotten in X-Men.
I agree. I also found it, and I asked Zach and Lonnie how things worked, right? Because before, like, the basic shape of the society really came into focus, I was like, is there like courts? Like, what is going? And they're like, no, it's like a secret prison. And I was like, oh, so I literally know people who have been waiting for their day in court who are basically being held without being really charged for years. Like, I know people that happened to, and that's essentially what's happened to Bishop. He is never getting his day in court, right? Like, this is just his life now. I was like, holy smokes, I can actually, like, these are real people that I actually know that I can put into this book. I mean, it's Bishop, I don't know him personally, but like, you know what I'm talking about. And that to me was really important, because like you said, this is something that happens. You don't get thrown in jail for being a mutant. That's not real. But like, you get thrown in jail for things that like maybe you even didn't do. Sorry to get heavy, guys.
No, but
you had me on about the prison book, right?
No, but
no, we weren't expecting it to always be sunshine and roses and jokes about the sex cops.
Yeah.
Sex cops.
But that goes to what Zach is talking about, and why I really like that the Jordan and the team that he's assembled here have, like, you guys are putting this stuff out there, and like Zach said, I just don't think that these kind of stories work necessarily in just your mainstream like superhero universe usually. And yet here it's, I don't know, there's such very smart risk taking here, that allows you to tell a story like that and to reflect on things that are actually happening. It just works really well.
I agree. I think that what they did, Zach and Lonnie, and everyone else working on the individual books, is they set up a world in which, even though the stakes aren't apocalyptic, they feel very real.
Mhm.
So like when people are black bagged by like Department X, that feels really real in an uncomfortable way.
Oh,
when
yeah.
you see Bishop at that third page, that's the splash page, that to me, like, I still think about that sometimes. Like I'm just sitting and I go, man, that page, that page feels very real. And like, yes, it's an X-Men book, so there's going to be punching and like probably some explosions and stuff, but like that quiet moment, I think, affects us in a way that like maybe a fist fight in the quote unquote real world, wherever it is, wouldn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we're used to seeing prisons in X-Men comics look like 90s Jim Lee, cylinder shackles. And immediately the other members of the team are going to bust through a wall and they're going to rescue that character and drag him back to to Xavier's mansion. And that tribulation is over,
and we even got that in the last year. There was a prison story in X-Men Gold, and I particularly enjoyed that story, but it was a very comic book take on the whole situation. It was not a reflection of the real world.
Right.
Yeah, I wanted it to feel lonely, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I can tell you right now, it feels like Bishop's a sad person.
Yeah, there was like, I don't remember what page it was, when he's in the mess hall and Danny's like, just keep your head down. And he just sits there and like has like an orange or something. He's like, okay, yep, keep my head down. I guess this is where I live now. And in the mess hall where they have those individual where you have to eat by yourself.
Oh yeah,
that's what I want people to feel like this whole book.
The little test dividers, don't cheat on your neighbor.
Well, don't build relationships with people. That's what you're in prison for. Stop talking. Be self-sufficient.
Right. And I wanted to kind of show how how ridiculous that is. How you try to divide people even at meal times, but then the next scene is them in the yard, right? And it's just this big open space, and it's like, what does X-Man want from them? To be completely isolated emotionally, but to kind of go through the motions of working together. And I wanted to show that here as well, in which Ford truly believes that this is a place that's working towards rehabilitation, right? He's like, we're going to fix you. And so they have those individual place settings, but you may go and do group exercises as well, so that you know how to function on the outside. And I was like, this is in no way rehabilitative at all. And again, that reflects back on kind of the way that we treat people who are in prison in real life, where it's like, how about you ask them what they need instead?
Well, since we mentioned Forge, I think it would be a good opportunity to just run through a couple of the big surprise characters. We already talked about Beast being a character that we wouldn't necessarily assume. I think Forge is very out of, not necessarily out of character, but
Forge is a cop. Yeah, that makes sense. That tracks 100%.
But having Forge as the warden it's such smart casting. It surprised me, but then as I thought about it, I was like, oh yeah, okay. That makes sense.
It made the most sense to me. I just I look at him and I'm like, your character traditionally is one that is put in positions where you have this bigger ideal that you're working towards, but you're hurting people on the way.
Yeah, he was the guy who literally got Tony Stark's contracts when Tony Stark said, well, I'm going to go be Iron Man now and not build weapons.
Yeah. And it's I can totally see him being for the greater good, I'm doing all these things. And then people being like, yeah, but that guy died and this happened. And he's like, yes, but this greater ideal, right? I'm him as a cop, him as a soldier, him building these, building weapons. You're just whatever you tell yourself at night, man. And so to have him be this warden of this place where he's like, we are here to help you and rehabilitate you. Good luck. And Bishop's first day, he gets into a fist fight with Beast. You're just I don't know if it's working, buddy.
I think another character, we mentioned this earlier, that I think some readers are going to be very surprised to see in this book is Danny Moonstar. If only because Rosenberg was using Danny in the Dead Souls mini, and then is currently appearing as a warlock technarch infested version of herself in UXM. So can you walk us through that decision process? And I don't need spoilers, like that's not what I'm digging for. I'm just kind of curious, like if there was contentiousness over that decision to have her in both books.
I don't know behind the scenes. There's like 3 curtains, right?
Okay.
At first she was on the list, and then I was like, cool. And then they took her off, and I was like, okay, like no problem. But then they were like, if you do want her, we see, we really like to fit her in with the rest. So if you want to have her in your book, and then maybe she'll appear somewhere else, that'd be great. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm not going to ask questions, so I don't have to tell lies. But I think kind of as the series goes along, you'll kind of understand how it works. But in terms of her kind of role in this book, besides what was discussed earlier, she sees things, right? Like that's her whole thing. She's someone that sees portents and omens, but also just in general kind of is the person that knows things, even if she doesn't know why she knows them.
Yeah.
And I thought, Bishop is, and I love Bishop, so sorry people that don't like him, I go on about him forever, but Bishop, to me, having him in this role where he's trying to solve this mystery, the larger mystery of the place, but also the one that's introduced at the end of the issue, was really, really fun for me, because his whole thing to me is that you can't really mess with his brain. You just can't do it. Eventually it orients itself and he knows what's going on, right? Sometimes it takes a while and he kind of has to use context clues, but like his whole thing is that he's memorized all the timelines, right? Like he just knows.
Mm-hmm.
But something is, this universe is doing a real number on his brain. And so to have kind of Danny and Bishop kind of meeting in the middle was a really cool thing for me, because they both know things, even if they're not quite sure why they know them at any given point.
Huh. He's Lucas Bishop. He knows things.
He knows things. He knows. He's a good Hufflepuff.
The one other person who's here, and this, I dropped the book when I turned this page, was Shard Bishop, Lucas Bishop's sister.
Yeah.
His sister, who last we saw was a dead hologram.
Listen, I love Shard.
I think I might actually like Shard better than like Lucas Bishop.
That's 100% fair. I too probably do.
His extra not great, but she's great, and that's a very important distinction. And I want more for her.
Yeah, I do love her. She was one of the things that I brought. I was like, can I need this thing to happen in this role to be filled. Can it be Shard? And they were like, yeah, sure. I think they said no to 2 things.
Okay.
One of them was Sabretooth, which I was like, okay.
Oh.
I like Sabretooth. Just because, like, I wanted him to be the opposite of the big scary guy. Mm-hmm. I wanted him to, like, I don't know how I was going to pull it off. They were like, sorry. Yeah, he's okay. And
Jason
the other
Aaron
one
already called dibs.
Hey, that's fair. 100% fair. And the other one was, I think it was the Cuckoos. I think I actually did ask for them.
Okay.
And they were like, nah, G. And I was like, all right.
Yeah, because Shannon's got them in Nightcrawler, right?
The amazing Nightcrawler.
The amazing Nightcrawler. Yes. But I'm assuming you're a big Shard fan. From back in the 90s, she was always sort of like this vision in the Danger Room. So it was really, really surprising to see her come back here.
I had to do the callback. I do as many little callbacks as I can. I don't really believe in like kind of shoehorning like reference in. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, if I have a role that needs filling and I can make something a little extra for people that have been, with the franchise, then I'm gonna put it in there, and in a way that's not distracting to people who aren't necessarily familiar.
Oh yeah, I appreciate stuff like that. It makes my day when Shard shows up, or we see Pestilence Polaris just in a vision.
Yeah. Yes, that was awesome. Pestilence and like Hell Valkyrie Danny from the Defenders. I was like, yeah, give me that.
Yeah, the callbacks are fantastic. So I think you can tell we're pretty big fans of this.
I'm glad. It's stressful, right? Because like, especially with first issues, you're like, I promise there's more. Like, it's not just like we're going to get more, you know, complex than this, I promise. And so I was a little worried that people would just be like, why'd you put the black dude in prison? I don't want to read this. I'm like, well, I didn't. But like, also, I'm trying to do it from a perspective that like is empathetic.
Right. Oh, that's good. Now, we've been talking a lot about characters. So Vita, we have a little game for you if you are up to the challenge involving your characters.
All right.
Now, you just got finished writing a miniseries, Magic the Gathering Chandra.
Yes.
Which stars the fire-headed girl from Magic the Gathering, a game that I am trying to sell my entire collection of. If you would like to buy it, anyone, please hit me up on the Twitter. It's all boxed up. I can't get back in. I cannot get back in.
Oh, just play Arena. It's online. It's free to play. It's really pretty. Good. It's really pretty. I don't play Magic the Gathering on because it's not pretty. I'm that shallow. I love the game. I'm a huge like Magic the Gathering fan. I have way too many cards as well. But like Arena.
Then this game is going to work out for you. What we're going to do is we are going to name some of your characters, and I want to know off the top of your head what kind of Magic the Gathering deck they would play.
Oh, yeah. All right. Let's do this.
Let's start with Polaris.
Polaris? Oh, my God. Based on power level and like just Berserker style, I'd say red-green, but that is me projecting a little bit.
I have heard that is your favorite deck.
That is my favorite. I love everything but blue-white. But maybe actually she would be red-blue, right? She has all of these like really cool, dazzling powers.
That seems right. Yeah, she
she's
seems like someone who's going to go big or go home.
Yeah.
Like she's either going to combo out and make this ridiculous thing happen, or it's just going to not work.
Yeah. Now, I think that's her.
Now, what about Beast?
He's definitely, I think he's Esper. I think he's white, blue, black.
Yes.
Yes, and then Dark
tracks.
Beast is just blue, black.
I love that you are just spot on these answers. And people, if you don't play Magic, I'm sorry, but I do know that there's a subset of our audience that is going wild right now.
Well, there's a simple way to do it, right? So I used to work at a comic and gaming store in New York, and I worked in the gaming manga section for a long time, and people would come and be like, I want to play Magic, but I don't know what it is. And I'm like, easy peasy. Here's the color wheel, right?
Right.
White. Tiny creatures, you gain life. Sometimes they fly. Blue. You interact directly with the other person, not necessarily, and their cards, not necessarily by making creatures, right? So you just annoy them to death.
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
Black is just gross. You make zombies and then you drain their life and give it to yourself. It's very gross. Red, you just set them on fire. It's just very aggressive, right to the face. You know, it's very simple. It's the simplest color to play. And then green is big creatures. And so if you like an aggressive kind of game, you go with the like green, red stuff. If you like a very cerebral game, you go with the white, blue, right? So it's just, you know, it's like you look at the color and what does it inspire? That's the one.
It works out real well. Now, the next character, Bishop. He's an interesting one in my head, but I'm curious what you'd have to say.
I think he might be Captain America colors. I think he might be red, white, blue, but also there's a good argument for green, white, blue, because he does know a lot of stuff, but at the end of the day, he's going to figure it out and then use it to punch you in the face.
See, I guess I'm more informed by like the Messiah era stuff, which is when I started, reading, and that's the first Bishop that I really got into, which I'd say is very much like a red, white, very aggressive, but very, I'm doing this for a dang reason and I'm going to blow up the world, but trust me, I'm doing it as lawfully as I can.
I think red, white definitely makes a lot of sense for that, especially. I think the blue for me is him having all that knowledge. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And using it to like manipulate like events. But like, yeah, I mean, Red White, I 100% back that as well because he's
Now the last character we'd have is Honey Badger.
I love her so much.
She's amazing. She's perfect.
Shoot. Actually, she's Gruul. I think that she's red green.
Yes. Yep.
She's just
That's
straight
actually
red
right.
green. Just smash and burn and eat it, whatever it is.
Adam, I gotta ask, were you ever a magic person at all?
Never. And I gotta understand. I gotta admit, I didn't really understand anything that you guys just said, but it just made me so delightful that you guys are having such a nice connection.
I tell you what, I haven't played in years. I got out after Dragon's Maze, pretty much after playing for a few years. I graduated college and then didn't have the people I was playing with anymore, and then you just stop buying things.
It's an expensive habit for sure.
Oh my gosh, it's the worst. It was the worst. Oh, I'll just pick this up while I'm here. Oh, I need this, and then you're thousands of dollars in cardboard later.
It's like the perfect intersection between people that compulsively gamble and people that compulsively collect. It's just right in the middle. So beware.
Now, the one thing that our listeners compulsively do is ask questions. And we put out a call for some questions for Vita out on twitter.com. And we wanted to ask you a couple of those.
Awesome.
So are you ready?
I am ready.
Our first one comes from a friend of the show, Ravel, who says he's going to be very on brand here, which is true. And he says, part of the torments of prison is the aspect of the lack of proper mental health. Is this something that this is something that some of the books cast has had issues with in the past? I'm thinking specifically of Polaris. So how did you approach the lack of mental health treatment in this book, or was that a topic that just wasn't in the scope of the story you were telling?
Oh man, I can't really get into it without spoiling stuff that's to come. It is something that I had at the back of my mind, but even just in this issue, I think that what we wanted to do with this space and the way that it was kind of laid out and the way that the characters related to it was kind of show that like this affects how they express who they are, right? Being locked in this place and seeing these things deteriorates kind of their better angels and makes them a much more raw person. But as we go along, I really do, especially Polaris, but I think everyone to a certain extent. I this with Beast and Danny as well, as Bishop. I wanted to show that like this is specifically a place that's meant to keep them off balance and meant to, to make them react in these erratic ways, if that makes sense.
That's a real good answer. Sam Rutzik on Twitter, S. Rudzik, asks, what X character would Livewire get along with best? And who would Livewire be most contentious with?
Oh my God. That is a good question. I think...
Livewire, for those who don't know, is the character of your Valiant Comics ongoing Livewire.
Yes, she's a technomancer, which means she can control all technology with her mind. She's like Siri, but less evil. What? I think she would really... I think she would really get along with Beast, actually. Because she's also hyper intelligent, but people have very specific... She's a 6 foot tall, very muscular Black woman, so people have very specific expectations of who she is and what she can do. Just like you look at Beast and you have these expectations. So I think that they would really bond on that level. And I think she would probably fist fight Magneto or Emma Frost, both of whom are near and dear to my heart, clearly. But Magneto being someone that is very similar to Harada, who ultimately she was her mentor and then they parted ways because she realized that what he was doing was harmful. And then Emma Frost, because Livewire doesn't like being manipulated and she doesn't like seeing other people manipulated. And Emma thing is that she has survived because she can do that.
Right.
So Livewire would be like, listen, I get it, but like go into my mind and we gonna have a problem. So yeah, that's a good question.
That's good. One Wheelchair X asks, if you were given the power to resurrect any dead X-Men character, who would it be?
Oh my god, I don't know who's dead.
I mean, look, that's a very relevant question.
I don't know, because I honestly don't know dead and when they're dead. Time is a flat circle. I guess if Shard is still dead.
Shard's still dead.
Shard's dead.
Yeah, Shard.
Well,
No,
Shard
regular
was always dead and then became double dead, I think.
Yeah, triple dog dead. Yeah, I guess. Who else is dead? I don't know. Jean's back, right? Jean's back.
Jean's back. She's back.
Wolverine
Yeah, she got in a relationship with someone and he got thrown in prison. Maybe you've heard of it.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Like, I guess Shard. I also, like, I don't know what is going on when in the other series.
That's fair.
So I'm like, can I say this person? So I'm just going to say Shard because that's the safest answer. If I could resurrect a time period, like, I would definitely revisit chunks of like the 80s and 90s if I could just do that. But
that is good. I think we'll go with our last question here because we're running a bit out of time. No, believe me, Vita, it's fine. I think everyone would like to hear you talk at length about all this stuff, which they have. But this question comes from Forge, which is a picture of Forge in a jacket without a shirt on and some hot pants.
Okay.
Who says, and I quote, "Why am I not in jail? Because I am frequently turnt."
Because we needed someone that lit to be in charge of the jail. He can't be held down by the jail. He is the jail.
Forge is the jail. I appreciate that spoiler from this book that I assume is canon.
I'm excited to see what people think when they start kind of seeing more from Forge's perspective as well, because he's someone that is very important to this series. So.
What a great teaser! I like that.
That's great. Well, I think that pretty well does it for today. Hey, Vita, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It was a pleasure.
Now, if people have been interested in what you're telling, obviously they can pick up Prisoner X. Number 1's out. Number 2 is coming out soon. Dates are in the future. They're fine. Figure it out. Follow people on Twitter. They'll be yelling about it. But yeah, what else do you got going on, and where can people find you?
I am always on Twitter and Instagram. Both of them are the same handle, at Definitely Vita. Vita with a T. Definitely. I do use blockchain on Twitter. That's just for my own safety and mental health. But my Instagram is open. So if you are caught up in the blockchain, feel free to head over to Instagram, and I'm there all the time. And I have Shuri number 6 will be out when this goes out. So check that out. I bring Shuri to Brooklyn, which is a lot of fun.
Oh, dope.
Yeah. She gets to meet my son, Miles.
That's so cool.
Boy. Good boy. But yeah, I'm writing 2 issues of Shuri. I have a creator-owned series called Submerged, which just came out in trade. So yeah, that's some stuff. Livewire from Valiant, as we've said before, is an ongoing series. And the first trade should be out next month. So yeah, awesome. Check me out.
That is great. If you enjoyed this podcast, people, you can go on over to patreon.com/XavierFiles. That's where you can give us money and we'll do episodes about things you want. That didn't happen this time because we were talking about Age of X-Man, which has become a part-time job for me, and I'm not mad about it. It's just a truth that I'm living at the moment. But you can do that at the $2 a month level, get some other stuff, including live video chat things that I'm doing monthly where I'm answering your questions about just banal stuff, and it's better than it sounds. You can also follow me on Twitter at XavierFiles, or what's the website, XavierFiles.com? I kept that pretty simple, I think. I'm also going to be at C2E2 next week as this airs. Wow, like in a few days. I'm not tabling. I'm just going to be walking around. But hit me up on Twitter if you're going to be there, and we'll say hi. I'm going to have little business cards, and I am at least going to have one page or 4-page zine comic about Adam X, the Extreme printed.
Yes.
And potentially a second one whose title I'm going to exclusively reveal here. It is Wolverine in Adamantium Chef.
Oh, that's so good.
I've seen the preview art. It's going to be really good. I'm excited for it.
I mean, no, the art's going to be bad. The art's going to be atrocious because I'm drawing with my finger on a tablet and I don't have artistic skills to begin with. So I am just light boxing over pictures of Morimoto from Iron Chef and hoping for the best. He's my favorite Iron Chef, except for the American version where Jeffrey Zakarian did become an Iron Chef, and he's probably my favorite Food Network star. But that's not the point here. This isn't a cooking podcast. It's great. Adam, where can people find you online?
All right, guys. I believe that the day this comes out, the last page of Bish and Jube's Attack on the Mansion is going to be on adamrec.tumblr.com. If you want a print zine copy of it, go to adamrec.bigcartel.com. For $3, I'll send one to your house. And you can always follow me on Twitter at Arthur Stacy. And I think that's all I got for today.
That's good.
Yeah, Vita, thank you again. This has been wonderful talking to you.
Thank you. Like I said, off recording, I'm a very big fan of the podcast.
Oh,
thank you. That means a lot.
That. Now, next week, if you are a fan of the podcast, dear listeners, we're going to be talking about Star Trek, and I don't know nothing about Star Trek.
Ooh.
I've watched those J.J. Abrams movies.
Luckily, I know at least a little bit about Star Trek, so we'll have a little bit of knowledge going into that.
We are not going to be talking about the novel that's a sequel to one of these. That's going to be wild, but it's going to be a real fun time. But until then, this has been Battle of the Atom. We hope you survived the experience.
Get it!